Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Intelligence Edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll examine intelligence, nature versus nurture, or the biological and environmental contributions to intelligence. We'll start with the biological side and look at evidence that our intelligence is inherited. Then we'll look at evidence that the environment also impacts intelligence, followed by a discussion of how both nature and nurture interact throughout development to influence our intelligence. The biggest debate with respect to the influences on intelligence is nature versus nurture. Evidence for the idea that we inherit our intelligence, that it's written in our genes, comes from family studies and looking at how similar someone's IQ score is to other relatives. We know how many genes we share with our siblings, parents, cousins. So if intelligence is genetic, then we'd expect people who are more closely related to each other to be more similar in IQ scores. We have data from over 100 studies of IQs in families, and for sure we find this pattern. The more closely you're related to someone, the more similar you are in IQ. Twins are a special case because both identical and fraternal twins develop under similar environmental conditions, meaning that both twins go through similar stuff at the same point in development. They would have grown up eating the same type of food, gone to the same school with similar activities and opportunities. But identical twins share 100% of their genes with each other, while fraternal twins only share 50%, just like regular siblings. So if intelligence is strictly influenced by the genes, we'd expect identical twins to be much more similar to each other in IQ than fraternal twins. And again, we find this pattern in the data. Even more striking is the fact that identical twins raised apart are still more similar to each other in IQ than fraternal twins raised together. This makes it sound like it's all genetic, but wait. If intelligence was just from genetic factors, then identical twins should score exactly the same in IQ, whether they were raised together or not, and they don't. Also, if it's all about the genes, then fraternal twins should be as similar in intelligence as any other regular sibling pair, since they both share 50% of their genes. But we find that fraternal twins are more alike in their IQ scores than other sibling pairs, and this is likely a reflection of the fact that fraternal twins would have had a more similar environment growing up than regular sibling pairs. Finally, we find that everyone is more similar to each other in IQ when they grow up sharing an environment than when they don't. This is also true for adopted children, who end up scoring similarly to their adoptive family in intelligence, even though they share no genes at all with them. Support for environmental impacts on intelligence is also seen when we look at examples of extreme environmental conditions, such as a severe lack of nutrition and stimulation, and how this type of environment progressively decreases a child's IQ. But if the child's environment suddenly changes and they're adopted into a home where they receive proper nutrition, support, and stimulation, then you can watch their IQ scores increase. Another curious finding that supports the environment is the Flynn effect, which is the finding that IQ scores have increased roughly 3 to 5 points every decade since the 1930s. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much, but that would be a 40-point increase in the average IQ score in less than 100 years. This is much too fast to be due to a genetic change. So what's going on? Well, it's thought that it's the result of a better environment, better nutrition, education, and medical care that are all gradually increasing the mental abilities in the population. It looks like we have support for both genetic and environmental influences on intelligence, and most researchers today agree that these two factors interact throughout development to determine our intelligence. One idea is put forth by the range of reaction principle, which says that your genes determine the upper and lower boundaries for where your intelligence could be, but your environment will determine where within those boundaries you actually end up. This idea says that we won't end up smarter than our best genetic potential, no matter how much stimulation and excellent nutrition we get, and that being raised in the best environment will allow us to reach our top potential. But growing up in impoverished conditions that lack nutrition and stimulation, this idea predicts that we would end up at the low end of our range of intellectual potential. Well, we just explored the biological and environmental contributions to intelligence, starting with the biological side when we looked at evidence that our intelligence is inherited. Then we discussed the environmental impacts on intelligence, followed by a discussion of how both nature and nurture interact throughout development to determine our intelligence. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?